So I was about to make myself a cup of coffee, and I brought out an alcohol stove that I reviewed quite some time ago from the company SilverAnt Outdoors. Now, I have the stand that goes with it, and I'll be using the SilverAnt Outdoors pot to boil the water for the making of the coffee. But what I wanted to show you is an update that SilverAnt has provided to give this alcohol stove pot stand combination even more versatility. If you're interested, keep watching. All right, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on the alcohol stand and the stove and pot stand and everything else because like I said, I do have a separate review on it. So I'll link that review at the end of this one if you want to go back and get a little bit more detail on it. What I wanted to do is focus on the update accessory that SilverAnt is offering to go with this. So first off, I have to show you the original. So this is the pot stand windscreen type of a thing. It has a set of crossbars that go on top and you set them down on, and you drop this whole unit down over the alcohol stove and you put your pot on top. Simple device, right? And it is a simple device and very effective as well. Now the update is SilverAnt Outdoors is now offering a different set of pot stands to go with this setup. If you want them as an option, you can buy them separately and alone. And basically they work exactly the same way, but they have a completely different shape. And what that does is adds a whole lot to the versatility of these pot stands. So rather than going all the details out here in the woods, what I'm going to do now is cut away to my basement studio at home. I'm going to show you in some detail how this pot stand, this new version, actually enhances the original pot stand windscreen combination and the alternative uses I found for it. Then we'll come back and close this video out. All right, so we're in my basement studio, and I just wanted to show you the setup, the same one that I'm using out in the woods for this video, show you how I carry the stove inside of this pot. Now, there's a reason I'm using this specific coffee pot, teapot, because it's also made by SilverAnt Outdoors. So everything is inside. I have the stove there, and inside of here is the windscreen and pot support. We're just going to assemble this quickly like that, and this sets so that the ventilation is at the bottom. You'll see why in a second. Inside here, I keep the titanium stove inside a plastic bag, just in case there's any residual alcohol, it doesn't leak into the pot. So it does look very much like the Evernew titanium alcohol stove. In fact, it's pretty much an identical copy. The only difference between the two is that this one does not have a fiberglass wick inside, like the Evernew does. As a result, it takes much, much longer for this to come to a bloom. And that's one of the advantages. Actually, the best advantage that this setup has is that it accelerates how quickly you can get this stove to heating water. So inside the bag here, we have the two pot supports that comes with this setup. Normally, when you purchase it, if you can buy the stove by itself, or you can buy all three of these things. The pot supports would sit on top, and that's how you use it. Just put your kettle on top of that. You can see there's just enough of a gap around the top for exhaust fumes, and it works out well. Now, the new pot supports, what's the advantage over the old pot supports? So, for use with this setup, get them put together. So you can see the comparative sizes here. The advantage is not all that great when you're using it with the windscreen pot support. First, get them all hooked in. See how they hook in right here. There's little slots on each of the pot supports. It sits down over top, same height, same amount of clearance as it does with the traditional ones. The advantage comes if you want to use it like this. Now you can set it right on top of the stove, no windscreen or pot support portion of it, and it will still work. Now, my experience in using it this way is that really is a bit too much pot gap between the top of the burner and the bottom of the pot is quite a bit. Now, it does help with simmering, but it's also very exposed to the wind. So you're going to want somehow to protect it from the wind if you're going to use it this way. I want to show you this setup, and we're going to do a quick demonstration of how it works. But on top of that, there is a couple of additional uses that I don't think SilverAnt actually considered when they made this, but it works perfectly for them. All right, let's get started. All right, I've brought in my plate that I like to do these testing on. So just for safety's sake, I'm not going to do a complete and full boil test here today. This is a demonstration of how this windshield pot support piece actually helps accelerate the bloom time. So one of the issues I have found, I'm sure a lot of people have found with the knockoff Evernew, is that it is slow to bloom. So it is lit. You're probably not seeing anything. I can see a little bit of a blue flame down inside. I'm going to turn the lights off now so that you can see what happens. So right now it takes, I don't know, upwards of 3-4 minutes before everything gets hot enough for all those jets to start to ignite. Now it depends on the weather, of course, as well. But what I found is by using this, it creates a chimney effect, and that seems to accelerate the bloom time. So let me turn off a few of these lights. So I've left one light on. Let's see, I might as well turn that off as well. So you can still see that there is just a little bit of blue flame coming out of the top, but the jets have not engaged. Now, if I drop this over, best way to do this, by the way, is from the bottom. Immediately, the flame starts to climb up through the crossbars, and already the jets are starting to ignite. So there is a chimney effect. Now, this can really get rocking and rolling, but it still takes a little bit of time. It's faster than it was before, but it's not as fast even as the original Evernew would be. However, I wouldn't wait for a full bloom to occur. Why waste the heat and fuel? I put the pot on now. May take a couple of seconds, maybe 20-30 seconds longer for it to come up to full heat, but it's still going to boil, and you're not wasting any fuel doing that. All right, so as I mentioned, I'm not doing a full boil test for you on video right now. However, I have done those tests and tests with all the other items I'm going to show you now, and I've recorded those and put them in the video description if you want to see that for your reference. What I wanted to do now is quickly show you another means or a couple of other ways you can use the new pot supports from SilverAnt. So let's put them back together in that cross formation. Now, the first thing I wanted to try this with was a Toaks titanium stove. It occurred to me that I think it is just the right size and diameter for a Toaks titanium stove, and it is. So if you want to use a pot support, that fits on perfectly. Put your pot on top. Now, I will say that the pot gap is not great here. It is not quite an inch in height, so you don't get the full peak speed that you normally would from a Toaks titanium siphon stove, but it still works. It still comes to a boil, just it takes it a little longer, but it is a nice compact system, so it works great like that. Now, I also reached into my collection and found a couple of other things that were worth trying. These are two homemade alcohol stoves. This one made from a little Vaseline lip therapy and a couple of pieces of carbon felt. Just so happens that fits down inside, and I can use it in the upside down fashion like that. And that also works really well. Now, I've also got another alcohol stove. I made this one out of a 30 milliliter. They call them cosmetic tins. I just refer to them as aluminum tins. This one also has carbon felt. I coiled this one around in a direction like that, and that also sits down inside. So again, another very ultra lightweight setup, very effective, and just a nice pot support for both of those. But there is one more that I want to show you that I tried, and I wasn't sure how well this would work, and this worked so much better than my expectations. And that is with an Esbit cube. So I have said many times in videos, I'm not a big fan of Esbit cubes. They work to a degree. I have rarely, if ever, until just now, been able to get 2 cups of water to a hard rolling boil with an Esbit cube, regardless of the setup that I use. Well, let me show you what I did with this. This is a piece of foil that I just bent into shape. You can see this where the Esbit cube sat in the bottom. And I put it down inside like this, put the Esbit cube in it, and I was able, using this same pot, I was able to get 2 cups of water to a boil in 11 minutes. And I'm actually quite happy with that because, like I said, that's a rolling boil, not just hot with bubbles, but a rolling boil. The Esbit cubes have a runtime of 14 minutes. It took 11 minutes to get to a boil, but I was perfectly happy with that. Now, if you don't want to use it in this formation, you could do the same thing by just placing the Esbit cube down on a piece of foil or something and turning this upside down over top of the Esbit cube. I think I can probably show that, even though it's wrapped up in a piece of plastic right now. And then use it like that, whatever your preference is. I found it easiest just to lay it like this, the foil inside, Esbit cube inside, and it worked perfectly. All right, let's get back to the wood so I can finish making my coffee. All right, my coffee's ready. Hopefully it's at the right temperature. Smells like it. Oh, nice. I used a Vietnamese fin to make my coffee today. I'm going to do a review of that under a separate video, but I've got to tell you, it makes a nice cup of coffee. All right, some closing thoughts for the new pot stands from SilverAnt Outdoors. What I really like about these is the versatility that they offer. They work with the existing windscreen, they work on top of the alcohol stove by itself, and as you saw at home, I can do a lot of other things with it that I just came up with. I'm sure there are even more uses for a pot stand like this, but what I'll do is I'll open it up to you. How else would you see yourself using this type of a pot stand? If you have any ideas, put them in the comments section. Of course, what I'll be doing is putting a link to where you can take another look at the pot stands as well as the other items from SilverAnt Outdoors that I showed. And yeah, so they'll all be in the video description. But if you have any comments or questions, put those in the comments section. Until next time, get out and explore and take that path less traveled because it will make all the difference. Bye for now.